Hello and welcome to Ham Nation, episode 544 for April 12th, 2023. And hello, I am Josh, KI6NAZ. Thanks for joining us here on Ham Nation this evening. Let's hop right over and say hi to our wonderful hosts. Well, hello, everyone. I'll start at the top, right up there. Gordon West is back. He's going to be talking to us about his adventures, but how have you been, Gordo?
Oh, we're doing fine, and sorry I had to miss 2 weeks ago, but as you'll hear tonight, you'll find out who had me under orders.
Yes, indeed. Uh-oh. Oh, I noticed your little shirt you got on there. Maybe that has some foreshadowing of what you might be talking about. And Don, how are you? You're looking good today.
I'm trying, Josh. Thank you very much. Yeah, we had a wonderful Easter. Hope everybody else did as well. Mother-in-law went in the hospital. She had some surgery today, and she's doing very well in recovery. So that's the good news out of the only bad thing that happened on Easter. But we've got a good solar report for you tonight from Dr. Tamitha Scove. We've got the Newsline people coming up. Got information on the Newsline Town Hall meeting that is returning to Dayton this year. We've got a big Dayton-centric show. And I'm also going to be with one eye watching you, and then at about a half an hour or so with the other eye watching the New Orleans Pelicans, Oklahoma City Thunder NBA playoff game, the play-in game. So I'll be conflicted because I'm from Oklahoma, but I live down here now. So normally I don't care who wins, I'm happy. But tonight I kind of want the Pelicans to win, Josh. I really do.
All right, I can understand that. Well, you might notice that Amanda is not here tonight. She is on a special mission, which we'll find out about in the future. But that leaves all the responsibility on me to talk to our very special guest, and we'll bring them on right now. Mr. Michael Kalter, how are you doing, W8CI? How's it going?
I'll tell you what, I am excited to be here amongst the superstars of amateur radio. And
oh, wow.
Really appreciate it, a chance to be here and to talk to you a little bit about Hamvention, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart. And I live, my mailing address is actually Xenia, Ohio, and I live out in that beautiful rolling countryside about 7 miles south of the actual site itself. I live up on a Kilowatt Hill. But I am so glad to be here and looking forward to chatting with you just a little bit about Hamvention.
Yeah, and again, thanks for coming out. Hamvention is just obviously one of my favorite events of the year, but you mentioned kind of before we got started talking, you were kind of talking about how it's almost viewed as kind of like the Mecca, right, if you will? The coming to Hamvention it's like a yearly thing we all look forward to.
It is, in my mind, it is the Mecca. And I hate to say, and I don't ever say, it's just we run it. Yeah, we take responsibility how coordinated, but it belongs to all amateurs. I mean, when you look at how long this has been going on and how many things have happened and transpired at Hamvention over the years, and starting at the Biltmore Hotel to Hera Arena, and now to the Xenia Fairgrounds Expo Center, and all the different people that have been there, come and gone, and it's just such an exciting event. I start my week out the week before Hamvention. I take my little RV up there and park it, and I cut grass. I roll the infield with the tractor.
That's right.
I help pay bills. I answer questions. I do what needs to be done because we want to make this a spectacular event for everyone. And we're talking about volunteers, and I'm just a volunteer. I don't get paid anything to do it. I love amateur radio, and I love Hamvention, and I know all of you do, and all of you support Hamvention when you can, and when you're there, and even tonight you're supporting it. So it is just an exciting event. So ARL may have headquarters, but Hamvention has
Yeah, I always love that too when I go in the entrance and I see you right there with your trailer, welcome people and get to stop by and chit chat for a little while. So Hamvention, you've been doing this for a while, and it's always there's always something new and interesting going on. How do you keep it fun and interesting, and what do you got going on for 2023?
That's a great question. But before we get there,
Mm,
there's a couple things that I really want to do first, and we'll
okay.
get right to that. I want to first make sure I thank you guys for the work you do. You're a pillar for amateur radio, providing communication and providing new and exciting content all the time. And I want to thank our volunteers. We have between 600 and 700 volunteers.
Wow.
And it is a lot of people. But these volunteers want the very best for Hamvention. They want to make it great too. And they're there. A lot of them work so hard they don't get to see much of the show. They're just there working on stuff, trying to make it happen. I want to give a special shout out to two volunteers who they do so much and they help me quite a bit. And that's Hazel and Jeff Everetts. And they do, they help us with so many things. And I like how they're helping to police things and make sure we're all done on time. So, and with that being said, we could still use a few more volunteers. So if you're interested, get to our website, hamvention.org, and you'll be able to see there how to volunteer. And let's see, I wanted to also mention, while I'm talking about the event, I want to remind everybody that Josh is going to be there, and he's going to have, and you'll be able to see him and his, you might be able to see him out by the band bus later in his regular clothes, but he will be giving a forum, and that forum will be on Saturday morning, and it'll be, whatever Josh comes up with. And, I personally think he's very creative. He'll bring on some of the luminaries of amateur radio, and maybe not so luminary.
It should be interesting regardless. At least I hope so.
It'll be a great show. And so you got to come because we gave him a real big forum room. So we want him to fill that thing up. And that's going to be on Saturday morning. And then I know Don Wilbanks is going to talk about this soon. But Don's going to be, they're going to have the special town hall event that Mr. Pasternak used to have all the time.
And returning, and we appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, yeah, and I'll let him talk about it in a little bit, but along with that, and we're going to talk in a few minutes about the award winners, but we have so many great forums. We put a lot of time and effort in the forums. And if you look back at the history of Dayton, that's what kind of made it a place to go, was the forums. People wanted to go learn. They wanted to go find something out. And so they go to forums and learn something new. And so I want to really impress upon everybody looking. The forums are now posted on the website. So when you get a chance, plan your days before you go. Don't just go there and then go, well, let's see, what do I want to do? Because there's like 4 different forum rooms and they're going on all the time. Make an agenda there. And you asked me, what's new? Let me tell you a little bit about something exciting that's new. Hera Arena, God love them. That was a great place, a great venue. And by the way, I will take responsibility that in 2012, I think I was the general chairman. And that was the year that the sewer line ruptured.
Still talking about, still they bring it up every year, right, Michael?
No, it's everybody mentions it, and I sort of guess I take some ownership to that, but it happens. That happens. So, but at any rate,
there are worse things to be remembered for.
Yeah, the thing about you can remember snow. You can remember rain where you're, it's up to your ankles there. back when we had it in April, and it was cold, and it was, the flea market was tough. But you know what? We're hams. We take a slamming and we keep on hamming, and that's what we do.
I like that. That's going to Don's
right.
book. He's writing that down.
Copyright Michael
You
Kalter.
can have it. I came up with that one. But looking back at the history of, and I know Gordon has a lot of history there. It's been fun over the years getting to know Gordon each year. And I do want to mention that when I first started as the awards chairman, where we select what we consider the best of the amateur radio operators, Gordon has been an amateur of the year. That's a big award. That's really hard to win that, to be the best that there is. And it's not only a lifetime achievement of doing things, it's a continual passion and love and trying to make things happen, to make the whole community, the greater population of amateur radio. That's what makes a good amateur of the year. And I always wanted to mention that I forgot to do that in the last year. We were talking about ham of the years, and I thought, oh my God, there's one of them right there. And but I wanted to mention that one. Let's see what else I want to talk about. Oh, we talk about food.
Oh yeah.
God love Hera, but their food sucked. It was not good. I'm sorry. It was expensive, and it was just not fulfilling to me. I needed a variety, and not that I have a particular palate that needs to be satisfied, but I really like the fact that we have so many really good food choices there, and we're also have an agreement where they can't charge $5 or $6 for a bottle of water. If we see that, they're out. And they make that agreement with us ahead of time. But the new thing for this year is that if that's not enough, we are going to have buses that will run you into Xenia and the different restaurants and drop you off and pick you up. So, that's something that we sprung for this year so you could see there are some really good places to eat in Xenia. And,
right.
And you got to kind of get down there to look at it. But maybe I can talk to folks from Xenia into making, to giving us a write-up so that, it will entice people if they want to do that. But the bus routes, they will be posted soon. We have, I know we wrote a big check for this, but we got a lot of good busing going on from different places. And you'll be able to choose those. I know that Contest University, I love Contest University. And I do want to put a plug in for them because I don't care if you're a contester or not. The thing about Contest University and people that go there and teach it, they are looking to be, 1%, 2%, 10% better in everything that they do. And to me, that's how a good habit is formed. And that's how really you make a lot of headway in amateur radio. You do it over and over, but you study it, learn it, and you go after the nuances. And that's what Contest University can teach you. You may not be a contester. You don't have to even listen to those lectures, but there's a whole lot of things about the other aspects of amateur radio that are really good. That's going to be at the Hope Hotel, and I think they still have openings, and that's all day on the Thursday. And I am really excited I'll be there that Thursday morning to welcome everybody there. And glad to see everybody there with that. I better take a breath. You probably got questions.
Well,
more stuff.
I do, but I think I want to mention too. So you mentioned food. There's lots of amazing options, but I think people also kind of need to make sure they understand the scale of everything we're talking about. Hamvention is big. Like there's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of vendor space, there's a lot of swap meet space, there's a lot of food space. So it's almost impossible to do it all in this weekend. So you really, I like what you mentioned earlier. That's been one of my recommendations is plan. Sit down. look at the forums, look at the vendor list, and make sure you create an itemized list and kind of prioritize it on what you want to hit when you're out here. Because again, look at this map, guys. It's a big fairgrounds that this is held at, and that's something that I think is worth repeating.
Yeah, it is. And while you have that map up there, you can see the racetrack there and that centerpiece. That's where the flea market is going to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll be rolling it, making it even smoother than it is right now. So we don't have more twisted ankles or, you know, we want to make people, it's a lot of walking. You got to be prepared for walking if you're going to go there. But then you can see all the buildings that you can go through. And so when you come there, have a good pair of shoes, plenty of money, a good attitude. And we're trying to have more and more places to sit and relax for a minute because, you know, some of us just have a hard time with being on our feet all day. But you want to be there. I don't want to walk every minute. Can you get a beer there? Yeah, you can get a beer there. And
big fan of the beer tent. Yeah.
So we do have that. And in that center section, right? You see where the buildings are those are huge buildings. They're very big. And in that center section there, they will be filled with food trucks. And it just absolutely about 10:30 or 11, if you're the least bit hungry, you're not going to believe the wonderful aroma that comes from those food trucks. And in the buildings themselves, I know we get complaints about airflow and that, and you know we're working on it. And I mean, it costs money to do these things, but they have bought more of those. And this is the brand name. It's a Big Ass Fans, and they are big.
Those are good.
And we are trying to leave that. We have ventilation systems on, and we leave those on all night. Try to get a nice, and we've been working with the Weather Bureau too. They'll be there, the National Weather Service, and they're working with us to try to make sure that we have an ideal weekend, that it only rains after 5 p.m. and stops raining by 7 in the morning.
You got to slip them an envelope.
That you publish what their booth number is, so that way if people have complaints, they can go straight there.
Right.
It will be, excuse me, it will be published. And as an aside, one of the things I do in the amateur radio world, I am a net control operator at our National Weather Service, which is in Wilmington, just south of where I live. And we cover the south half of Ohio, eastern Indiana, and northern Kentucky. And we've already had about 6 different activations this year, which is big because it's still early in the season. Anyway, let me move away from that, and let's talk about. Let's see. I think there are on the website, and we are posting more and more evening activities. You know, a beer fest here, meeting of this group there. There's a lot of different groups that want to get together, and they aren't all on there. So if you're listening to this and you got a group that's meeting and your stuff isn't on there yet, make sure we get it because we want to get it posted. And I want to talk then about, let's see, Sunday. It's free.
Free? There you go. You got to love that.
Free. Yeah, it's free because we want, you know, it'll be more for the people within the, 200-mile mark that want to get up at 6 in the morning and drive in, and they want to see what ham radio is about. And it goes over pretty big. You still have to get a ticket to get in. You will not be able to win, one of the major prizes. And there are some major prizes that are being donated. So we are really excited about that. And I think the exciting thing is how vendors are rallying around this. Our ticket sales are stronger than they've been in years. And we had a great year last year. Over 32,000 people, and the population of Xenia, Ohio is like 25 or 26,000. So
there's more hams than Xenia, than folks that live in Xenia, right?
Yeah.
What's your expectation so far for this year? Is it shaping up to another good year?
Oh yeah, because the ticket sales are ahead.
Oh wow.
There's a few booths left, So if you're a vendor, number one, you haven't paid your deal, you're coming up on the time where you got to pay for it. And because we got waiting lists, I have vendors telling me, well, if these guys don't do this or that, I want their spaces. So that's a reality. And, but that's business.
Sure.
But we are really excited. We want to, sure, we want to make money, and we give that money back in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, we give a lot of, we make a lot of donations to a lot of amateur radio activities. And we also donate a lot of money to scholarships. We feel that that's very, very important.
Excellent. It is.
Yeah.
That's
wonderful. I don't know if you guys knew. I also want to give a shout out to my friends in Orlando and in Huntsville. You guys, a lot of people think that, we are a competition.
Absolutely.
It's not a competition.
No. Sure.
If they're successful, we can be successful. Yep. Because if they do well, then it helps vendors and people that, to produce new radios, to produce new items, to produce new things. We want everybody to be successful in amateur radio. And I don't like it when people tell me, well, Huntsville's better at this and Orlando's better at that. Sure, there's things they're better at, and I applaud them for it. Mm-hmm. And that same goes with Friedrichshafen in Japan. I've been to all of these, and they're wonderful events. But we're all amateur radio operators. Too small of a group to be arguing amongst each other who's the biggest and who's the best. By the way, let me put a plug in for Visalia, and if you really want to go to a really interesting thing out in California, I've been to it. Mm-hmm. Toying with the idea of trying to fly out there again. And that's out in your neck of the woods. You're going to Visalia probably, aren't you?
It's in the north side of the state, so it's probably a good 6-7 hour drive for me. But I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about if I can square the time.
That's my drive to Huntsville. Go to Visalia.
There you go. All right. Don's hassling me. Don's hassling me. I do need to go, though. I should really go because I know the Bouvet team's going. Yeah.
I mean, you got a 6 in your call, right?
It is. That is that. Yes, indeed.
I think but I think it's important that we all support at these events. And I
agree.
Know that the QSO event that Eric just had, we want all the success for them too, because they're trying different things.
Yes.
And it's a new avenue of amateur radio. Okay. I'll get off my daggone soap.
No, I think you're spot on. And actually I think that's the best part about these ham fests is that they all have a unique feel. It's almost like you're literally going to another friend's home and visiting with them. It's just a different platform where we can all get together, and that's wonderful. I love that about it.
And here's the thing: we're all rowing oars of the same boat. We're all rowing the oars on the same boat.
Yes.
We are all rowing the oars on the same boat, for crying out loud.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we need to all get together on this, not to move apart.
So tell me about the awards. They're on the website. Let's give a shout out to those fine folks as well, because I think you mention them, but let's call them out by name. I can pull the website up too here so we can.
All right. And I'm not going to read everything, but I want to give you the best.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with our Special Achievement Award. And that goes to Dr. Jason McDonald, N2 TPA. He's active, well-known amateur extra class operator. He earned his license in 2003. It's interesting. He began his career as an RF engineer, and then he changed careers to become a trauma surgeon. Wow. Now, come on, that's a big change. I've thought a lot about that. How does somebody do that? So, Josh, there you go. And, but one of the things that his interests range from is operating in international disaster responses. And his true passion, though, is working with youth to promote amateur radio. Now, Dr. McDonald has been instrumental in promoting international friendship and community through amateur radio by forming scouting clubs in Canada, Philippines, Florida, and to date, there are more than 500 youth in these clubs have been licensed and are on the air. So congratulations to Dr. McDonald. And that is an example of when you win an award from us, it has to have a big footprint for a bunch of amateur radio operators. It's not just like, well, this guy deserves Amateur of the Year because he's got the biggest antenna. And I know we're going to talk about Arecibo and
right,
and my friend Angel down there. But that guy, when he made Amateur of the Year, he did a lot of stuff more than just have a big antenna.
Right.
So let's move to Amateur Radio Club of the Year. And this is the Delaware Valley Radio Association, the DVRA. And they have been formed in 1930, and a year after Dayton Amateur Radio Association. But they are from Trenton, New Jersey, and they have tripled in size over the last 6 years due to the wide range of amateur radio activities and events they offer. They consider themselves an all-purpose club, and they have all sorts of activities, from public service to operator training, mentoring, scouting events, informational monthly meetings, POTA events, and the operation of a world-class club station. And the DVRA's focus on training and its diversification of projects seems to attract new and prospective hams and engage radio amateurs at all levels and with widely varying interests. Several years ago, golly, I want to verbally carbon date myself, but I started the Club of the Year Award because I feel so passionately that the clubs make such a huge difference in amateur radio in every community. And that's where people get going. Yeah, there's a lot of individual awards, but the exciting thing is if you belong to a club, you're active in it, there's a lot of reward in that and helping people grow in the hobby and growing your own sense of worth. And I happen to belong to a couple of clubs, and sometimes I'm always amazed at the continuing dedication of club members, to maintain a repeater. For years, I kind of got away from getting on repeaters. Yeah, I try to get on them. And I'm meeting more people again and talking to people, the local people on the repeaters that I haven't really talked to in a long time, and really loving it. But it's all part of amateur radio. It's just all exciting. I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but I have a lot of passion about it.
All your passion points are right on the money. I think it's a fantastic way of immediately giving back to the community and giving back to ham radio too by involvement in clubs. So you're spot on, Michael. Who's next? Who's Technical Achievement Award I see next?
All right, Technical Achievement Award. I don't know if you guys know this individual, Dr. James Breakall. And he's been instrumental in amateur radio antenna technology developments for decades. I don't want to kind of verbally carbon date him, but he's been doing this a long time. He was very instrumental in bringing in the numerical electromagnetic code, that's the NEC, and he was a professor of electrical engineering at Penn State University from 1989 to 2022, and his call sign WA3FET.
FET, good.
He is
yeah, field effect transistor, perfect. Yeah,
yeah. What a guy! And you know what? I happen to have his nominations came through, and I went, I talked to this guy on the radio. He is the nicest guy on the radio, one of the biggest signals out there, and just beautiful. He's invited me up to Kilowatt Cafe now to have lunch with him or something. But he does so much. He's done, and he's retired now, but he's a consultant to the Army, the Air Force, Navy, on many antenna-related projects. I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, just getting like the Army, but all three of them, that's pretty amazing.
Indeed.
He's done a lot of other things, and I really urge you to read his write-up. But one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting, on the website there that you've got brought up, that picture at Penn State, he worked in the Applied Research Laboratory. But can you imagine being so good at antenna technology that they name a test range, an antenna test range after you?
You gotta like that.
Wow.
I mean,
I'd like to have an
come
antenna
on,
test range named after
that's
me.
amazing, you know?
Yes, indeed.
I mean, what a nice legacy, to have, a whole antenna test range named after you.
Very
just
cool.
even to be, yeah. So anyway,
That's nice.
I really congratulate Professor Breakall, and
Yeah.
very deserving of this award, and just really, we're going to be excited to give him this award at the awards banquet. So we got one more.
One more. I'll let you announce, and then you can.
Had any comments on Dr. Breakall?
Well, sorry, you cut up there a little bit. What was that?
Did you have any comments about Dr. Breakall?
I'm looking in the chat. I'm mainly trying to follow the questions. We've got a couple of them that came in, but I think they're for other points. So you can keep going. We can keep going to the next one.
Okay, good. Let's go to Amateur of the Year. And, I know they're all important, but, there's just a kind of a fine line between Amateur of the Year or technical achievement or special achievement. But there's usually something that just puts it over the top. And this year, Carson Dower, Delta Mike 9, Echo Echo. He's been active in European amateur radio through WRTC and Yoda for 30 years. Recently, he has spearheaded the DM9 Echo Echo Helping Hands. That's a movement to provide amateur radio equipment to war-torn Ukraine by collecting donations and delivering them personally to communities in Ukraine. Approximately 5,000 kilograms of radios. That's over 10,000 pounds, 5 tons.
That's a lot of radio.
Wow.
That's radios, power banks, solar packs, and first aid have been shipped to Ukraine, along with the donation of countless hours of planning, packing, documentation, and accessing permits have gone into this endeavor. And can you imagine that? He's making these trips where he's loading all this stuff up, and all the coordination he's got to do first to get all this stuff in, load it up, then I think he actually drives right into Ukraine with the stuff. I don't know how that happens, but it does. So it's kind of heroic to do that.
Could be dangerous, I assume. It sometimes, would it not be?
Well, yeah.
Right.
I would think
so. Yeah.
We gave him this award. We were very careful. Like, are you sure you want us to talk about this? We can talk about around it or something. No, I'm good with it. He's also, get this, on his return trips, he loads up his empty trucks and stuff, and he brings refugees back.
Wow.
And he helps. His family has a hotel in Germany, and they stay there with him, and he helps relocate them when he can. And he's got a station there. They can operate the station. I mean, when I think about what this guy does and how the spirit of amateur radio, to me, this is it to make this happen. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too altruistic. But
No,
I think this guy, I mean, he's over the top fabulous. And he's a photographer. He's that kind of a really good, amateur photographer. But he's going to give a presentation on Saturday, not at the same time yours is, Josh, because I wanted somebody to come to yours.
Okay, good. Yeah, he would tell all the people. He wouldn't be going to mine.
But he's kind of shy to do this, but he's going to talk about all these
that's
things.
awesome.
So he's going to be there, and he talks about. Let me read you this quote he has here. He said, "Ham radio gave me a lot, and I try to get back to our great hobby. The world is very small when you have a radio license. You talk to the world, and eventually you also visit people in other countries. That's been true for me, probably for you too. And you always learn more about culture when you know people there. ham radio is great to learn languages, even if it is only a few friendly phrases.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I so believe that. One of my things that I preach about amateur radio, and we have the opportunity as amateur radio operators to understand cultures and to support each other's cultures prior to almost anybody else in the communication world.
Yeah.
It's becoming a lot smaller world with that. And it's, so that's about that one.
Well said.
What a wonderful award winner. That's
Yeah. Well, I think all of them are fantastic, but I love that. That's great. We got two simple questions because I think you covered a lot of stuff here, and a lot of the comments I was seeing were I think you kind of hit them. The first one from Brett Glass: will UPS be available to ship purchases back? I had to forgo buying a couple of things because I couldn't fly them home.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I don't know what the booth is going to be, but yeah, that's an important thing. We want to be able to help you get your stuff back.
That's the answer that will worry my wife the most, because that means I can ship things home. That I don't have to fly them back. So that will worry her.
Yeah,
I know some guys that are driving from California that
carry their stuff back. Wow, I don't think. Well, I have done that drive, by the way. I have driven from Ohio back to California. I had COVID when I did it, so it was a harrowing event. I don't know that I would do that again, but I did like the drive otherwise. So here's another one, a question about volunteering. So I'll pull up the website when we get this question going. But what are the volunteer shifts? How many hours about as far as giving support back?
Yeah, you'll get a free ticket and a hat. We have a parking place for you. And that will be for 6 hours. Doesn't have to be all at once. And just go to the website. And when you go to that website, go ahead and fill out the information. I know that, believe it or not, one of the more fun jobs is driving golf carts, and they need people. And I need people to help in the forums too, which is pretty easy to do, but still, we want to make sure everything is running smooth, especially for Josh's forum.
Yeah, we'll need some.
Don's too, and Don's. How could I leave that?
Yeah. Well, Michael, is there anything else we want to mention? Make sure I hit some of the points here. I think we got most of the stuff, and I appreciate everybody in the chat. I hope we got a lot of the comments. Like I said, Michael, you hit most of them without even being prompted. So anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I do. A couple more things. If you're still on the fence about coming, then and you need a place to stay, and you can go to our website, hamvention.org. But if you can't find it there, call the Greene County Convention Visitors Bureau, and they will help you find a room.
Good.
And if you're camping, there's campsites around. I don't know how full they're going to be, but my favorite campsite in the area is Caesars Creek State Park, which is south of Xenia, and it is a beautiful park. Probably all the full service are taken, but all the rest of them have electric, and it's an easy drive into Xenia. Easy peasy, beautiful country drive. So, and I also want to mention that the ARRL will have lots of different forums and things going on, and we are hosting the Great Lakes. We're part of the Great Lakes Division, and we're hosting them this year. So,
all right. So
they'll be having some talks there. And also, if you have questions and you can't think about them now, I'm good on QRZ, and so you can get my my email off that. But thank you very much. Thank you. It's so great to see you, Gordon, and your smiling face. You're a pillar of amateur radio, man. I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad you're still doing things and so active with it. And as a former amateur of the year, Don, I love your news. I love your newscast. I mean,
thank you.
You should be. I think they're going to be needing people like on CNN or Fox pretty soon. So, stay where you're at. But if you got to go, you got to go. So
I just finished a 43-year career in broadcasting, so I'm out of that right now.
Okay. Well, thank God for amateur radio still got.
Yeah.
Josh, thank you. And I hope this is what you were looking for. And I can't wait to see everybody in May. So, matter of fact, May 19, 20, 21. But get there early. Don't wait. Get there a day or two early. There's so much to do.
Well, I'm my excitement is growing day by day. I can't wait to shake your hand in person, Michael, and thanks again for being on. We appreciate you. All right.
You know, I've got a couple of
Don's
I've got a
got
couple
one.
of
Go for it.
I've got a couple of as I was just listening to this and really feeling sorry for myself. I'm not going to be able to go this year. I went to the very first, I think the first and second year that it was in Xenia, and it's a great venue, by the way. And it's been called the Mecca for a reason, because it is literally a pilgrimage. And our new Ham of the Year winner said that quite succinctly that it shrinks the world. Like the year that my son Tyler, who is now N7 TMW, he was not licensed at the time, he was running around in the flea market dressed up in Neil Rapp's pig costume for his podcast. He was Hammy that year. And my friend Simon Stannard from New Zealand was in our hotel. And so I wake up one morning, I think it was Saturday morning, and I can't find Tyler. I'm like, where the hell is my son? So I call his cell phone because he wasn't licensed at the time. And I'm like, where are you? He says, I'm down in the restaurant having waffles with Simon. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you two found a little friend. Now, where else would my son have the opportunity to go out and have waffles in Ohio with a guy from New Zealand? But at Hamvention, you know, I mean, it brings the world together. And like I said earlier, we're all rowing oars in the same boat. So if you've not been to Hamvention, you need to go. Just go. That's all I got to say about it. And thank you, Michael. You're a great guy. We appreciate you.
All right. Well said. Well, thanks again, Michael. You have a great rest of the evening. And like I said, I can't wait to see you in person.
7-3. See y'all later. And
see you, Mike.
Can't wait for it. Bye-bye.
Bye. That means I'm throwing to Gordo. Gordo, tell us all what you've been up to.
Well, first of all, Michael, don't go away, because in 2 weeks, we have a great short shots showing all of the fun that should have occurred and did occur, but wow, behind the scenes of Dayton. I mean, some bloopers you will not believe. They're all classic, but you're right, Michael. If it didn't happen in ham radio, Dayton will make up for it. And I so much appreciate this award to me back in 06. I am honored to be the recipient. So thank you so much, Michael. And we'll see you, Michael, in 2 weeks on Short Shots, and it'll crack you up on the things we're going to show folks that you never know would have occurred at the Dayton Hamvention. Well, 2 weeks in the past, I was Maritime Mobile, so sorry I couldn't be with you, but here's a little explanation as to the group that I was doing Maritime Mobile with, trying to track down an emergency position indicating radio beacon. As a ham, as a tea hunter, we're good at that. So go ahead and let's roll the show. The United States Coast Guard says we want more ham radio type operators to join the Amateur Radio Services contribution to the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. You go, oh yeah, an auxiliary, do a couple of things and they'll just sort of have you stand by. Negative. The Coast Guard is looking for active ham radio operators that are looking for a new job of volunteering under Homeland Security with a very nice Homeland Security laminated ID card. And the United States Coast Guard says we are looking for those that want to serve us on the auxiliary. And no, we're not going to be like immediately jumping aboard a Coast Guard boat, but there'll be plenty of at-sea activities. The auxiliary under now the U.S. Homeland Security was approved by Congress and endorsed by Congress in 1939. The auxiliary is made up of us, volunteers, 21,000 throughout 793 flotillas. Those are like groups throughout the country. We've offered 3 million hours to the United States Coast Guard. Many of the auxiliaries have 1,800 vessels. No, wait a minute. 1,800 auxiliaries have maybe one vessel like me that we're still paying for. There are 160 aircraft that auxiliaries have offered for their service. And now for us hams, there are 1,400 authorized on National TIA, National Transcommunication Industry Association, whatever NTIA stands for. We are allowed on those frequencies with our radio facilities. Now, what does the Coast Guard Auxiliary do? Well, first of all, we need to back up the U.S. Coast Guard because like every government agency, they're constantly under a budget crunch. And one of them is the retiring of a lot of their high-frequency gear. In the early days, long before many of you hams were born, including you, Josh, in the early days, the communications on the water was on 2 megahertz. That's 160 meters, folks. You know how far or how close that goes. And that was the old 2 megahertz radio, all tubes, goniometers and dynamotors and so on. Now, of course, thanks to Icom America and other folks that help also sponsor these ham radio conventions, it's all solid state. But 2182 remains the emergency channel throughout the world. Unfortunately, the U.S. Coast Guard can no longer maintain an avid watch on this frequency just because a lot of their equipment is being turned into other type of gear for like satellites and so on. So that's one of our responsibilities and capabilities as a Coast Guard auxiliarist ham radio operator is to be able to offer as a Coast Guard auxiliarist going through the training the capabilities to watch not only the distress channel 2182, but there's another channel 4125, and that's one of the Coast Guard safety channels for call-ups. Well, but they don't monitor it anymore because, again, of budget cutbacks, yet they have capabilities, indeed, of coming up on that frequency with nearly megawatts of ERP to capable of being able to make contact with any vessel that an auxiliarist would contact a number going back to Chesapeake, Virginia, to the Master ComCom Center saying, hey, we've got a distress and here's where we need your high-frequency transmitters. So the U.S. Coast Guard is looking for auxiliarists that wish to donate time and their facility, that's another name for your own boat, with a VHF marine radio. Whoa, VHF, you mean like 2 meters? Yeah, at 156 instead of 146, there are 55 channels for maritime communications, and for those mariners that just cruise inland lakes and rivers, as well as those mariners on the East Coast, Gulf Coast, and the West Coast that don't go into international waters, they don't even need an FCC license, but they do need a marine 55 channel VHF. You see it there, bottom port side, that's nautical terms, port side of the wheel. That VHF does more than just VHF voice. Part of the United States Coast Guard system is called Rescue 21, and they have hundreds, approaching thousands of receivers and transmitters high atop mountaintops all over the country to hear just the faintest of calls on a U.S. Coast Guard as well as a international VHF channel, and that channel is 16. Ooh, what's 16? Well, it's 1 156.8 megahertz, just up from your 2-meter band. In fact, many of you with a 2-meter radio can easily tune in, if you're near the water, a Coast Guard emergency on 156.8. And also this facility, their high sites, also have direction finding capabilities, and they're tied in via voice over internet protocol back to Chesapeake, Virginia. Now look carefully on the West Coast, the Gulf Coast, Florida. Oh boy, a bunch in Florida. The East Coast, and now the Mississippi. Sorry, didn't get the Mississippi ones, but they're all along there as well. This is where the U.S. Coast Guard is monitoring for any distress call to a 1-watt handheld that's held just above the water out to 20 miles from their shoreside stations. And there's areas that you see that, boy, we could use a fill-in here. This is one of the opportunities for the U.S. Coast Guard. Now, those Rescue 21 sites do not have a Coast Guard personnel freezing in a bunker on the top of a 5,000-foot peak, but rather they're all automated. They're tied into voice over internet protocol, and when someone hollers or sends a digital distress call, it goes back to several different sources being recorded the whole time. The site also does automatic through the Adcock antennas, direction finding to approximate the position. And if the vessel indeed has stayed up to date and has their little Marine VHF 25-watt radio, $200, great life insurance, with a Maritime Mobile Service identity number and a tie-in to their GPS, the Coast Guard gets all of that and is able to respond to Coast Guard unit. Well, what about the public? Do they really understand these radios? The answer is not a chance. They just want to get out there with their 40-foot, 30-foot, or 20-foot boat, maybe even a kayak. And why do I need a radio? Well, you'll find shortly that if your cell phone is not going to be able to get help, and usually it's a long transit to the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard does not have a direct connection where you dial like 911S for save my butt. It takes a long time to get to a Coast Guard unit via cellular. So what is one of the responsibilities of the Coast Guard Auxiliary is to offer classes on boating safety. And I, of course, work the maritime radio circuit. And you'll notice the ribbons. If you were in the military before, you get to show your dedication to service to the United States with your ribbons, and we hope that you'll wear them proudly, because under Department of Homeland Security, we are part of a military type system that really looks for volunteers like ham radio operators to handle emergency calls dealing with radios. And that's our specialty. Those radio distress calls from mariners all over the country come into a local facility, a local headquarters station, as well as they're also tied into the Chesapeake, Virginia master station, and they're able to watch as the local stations are able, the local Coast Guard stations are able to handle that emergency. And as you can see here, millions of dollars have been spent in upgrading the capabilities, so not a single radio call out to 20 miles at sea and sometimes further are not missed by a Coast Guard unit. Everybody is tied in. Everybody's listening. The units automatically direction find, and help is going to get started almost immediately because of the intertie. However, every so often, some particular intertie may fail, and that is where the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary ham radio operators as well are able to go in the service and be able to back them up and being able to hear calls. Out here on the West Coast, you'll find that the United States Coast Guard works closely with Vessel Traffic System, and the vessel traffic system sees who's coming in and who's going out, because part of Homeland Security is to ensure that we know exactly who's coming and who's going. So the auxiliary helps with search and rescue, mass casualty, pollution response, Homeland Security, like you see here, recreational boating safety, the classes that like I teach for radio, platforms for boating get-togethers, and recruiting other services in the United States Coast Guard. So we're out there as an extension of the Coast Guard, because did you know that automatically these modern marine VHF radios may also squawk your position and your intentions, called automatic identification service. All of this, much like AIS is automatic identification service, much like some of the other type of identification that we do on the ham radio bands. On the Marine VHF, channel 16, 156.8 is the distress channel. And we see that in an incoming message, we can see exactly where they are, latitude and longitude, how far away they are, and so on. So a distress call, we can maybe be in the area and help. So these auxiliaries will dedicate their own vessel and will go on orders to patrol. They'll look for buoys to make sure that they're at their proper location and report that back. So those with a vessel are highly sought to become a member of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. But hey, I don't have a vessel. All I got is like my radio gear. Is there a place for me? The answer is you bet there is. If you live next to the ocean, a lake, a river, so many areas that the U.S. Coast Guard knows of, but they might have a facility, actual Coast Guard unit right there on the lake. So maybe you're going to be working with a harbor patrol or someone else with a mutual agreement. And throughout the United States, including inland areas, lakes and major rivers, have the AIS, Automatic Identification System, and you as a Coast Guard auxiliarist need the equipment, and it's not expensive to be able to get it. The digital selective calling is what we use on 156.525. It's a form of packet radio. You packet radio operators know packet. And the DSC allows us to get to a Rescue 21 site throughout the country and get a response back. That's one of the ways that those of us that do Coast Guard inspections, and these are voluntary inspections where at the launch ramp, we might ask a person, would you like a safety check of all your marine gear aboard? And they go, heck yeah, this is a new boat. And those inspectors will come aboard and look around and see that the fire extinguishers are up to date, enough possible recommendations for where they should be stowed, and the flotation devices, everybody's wearing them, and all of this is important. So that's one of the other missions of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. One of the things we do with radio, and you as a radio amateur need to encourage mariners, is to get a regular authorized marine VHF, and they fall under Part 80. And the unit on the left not only has the potential of a GPS built in, as well as digital selective calling and so on, it reads out the marine frequencies, as all mariners know, as channel numbers. Many of the bootleg radios only do VHF frequencies. And if the Coast Guard says, go to channel 22 alpha, the mariner with an import radio that's really not designed as a marine radio will go, I don't have a clue. Or worse yet, they may have another radio that has shared the family radio service. So when the Coast Guard says go to channel 6, that's the left radio, they go to channel 6 on the Right Radio, which unfortunately, as you see, is on FRS, Family Radio Service 6. So that's some of the training that we do as a Coast Guard Auxiliary in the classes. And of course, the Coast Guard Auxiliary works very closely with other Coast Guard units, including not only the ship units, but the aeronautical units. Coast Guard Auxiliary also does a lot of training about not only wearing your personal flotation device, but also carrying a submersible handheld that the antenna, luckily above the water, is able to get a signal to the Coast Guard. Because remember, the Coast Guard facilities, Rescue 21, see 20 miles to sea, and many times they're poised with these automatic tied into the internet antenna systems that can Doppler shift to find position, as well as be able to communicate with a handheld down at water level. And it's always fun as an auxiliarist to be able, during vessel safety checks, is to take a look, and we always make sure and look at the vessel's batteries and things down below. As you can see here, I am climbing out of a very small hatch that leads down to the engine area. So as a Coast Guard auxiliarist, you never know. Well, I'm not into boating. I'm not into anything, but I'm on land. How can I help? Well, on land, there's the 121.5 personal locator beacon deal. Civil Air Patrol has certainly done a hard-working job on localizing those, but maybe you're in an area that the U.S. Coast Guard would contact an auxiliary unit, as they did me 2 weeks ago, saying we need to track down an activated EPIRB, or personal location beacon. Well, we could tell by the sound whether it was a PLB going from low to high, or an emergency position indicating going from high to low. I may have that reversed. I'll check it out next week. But these devices will many times be tracked down by a U.S. Coast Guard auxiliarist. So if you're into tea hunting, we need you as a Coast Guard auxiliary member. Well, what does it take for a Coast Guard auxiliary member? Do you need to do a lot of show and tells and so on? In fact, Susie and I and the cat this weekend will be this Saturday at Point Vicente, working with the Coast Guard units to demonstrate direction finding and marine radio, much like demonstrating ham radio with the classic 76 wagon. And what we do is we set up all of our equipment, and we get kids to come in and understand it. We avoid having the kids on a radio that's been on the PA system to say that word Mayday, and we tell them to absolutely avoid ever touching any marine radio that has channel 16 showing. That is the International Distress and Calling channel. So we make it a big point on our safety demonstrations with our facilities, and that's what they call an authorized radio facility, to train the kids for proper operation when they're operating. So we'll be on the air. Now, are we only on VHF? Oh, no. The U.S. Coast Guard, there's our kids training. The U.S. Coast Guard has channels at NTIA frequencies on near 160 meters ham, near 40 meters ham, near 20 meter ham. We've got them up and down the radio dial, and that's Pastor Jason Gann, W6AUX. In the East Coast now, and he and I are operating some of the digital modes. So as a Coast Guard auxiliarist, you don't have to have a boat. You don't have to live right on the water. In fact, you can be in the middle of the USA with just cornfields around you, and they may be looking for a high-frequency station. And high-frequency, we operate digital, and not the complex digital modes, but some of the more common ones. And we operate to Coast Guard auxiliary units throughout the country. All right, well, this sounds exciting. Where do I go to learn more? Well, first of all, go to CG for Coast Guard, AUX for auxiliary, cgaux.org. And you can go ahead and roll the site, Josh, to learn more about the Coast Guard Auxiliary and to learn more about all of the frequencies that the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary units may use. You're going to go to another website, and that is the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Areas, Districts, and Region. Go to navcen, navcen.uscg.gov, and that'll get you to an absolutely fabulous site to look up more about the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. Nav as in navigation, navcen.uscg.gov, and pick the comms spot and then see what it's like. Yep, there's training, but once you complete your basic qualification training, which much of it is done right on the internet, you're issued an NTIA as a radio card from the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, Department of Homeland Security. I should say the NTIA gets you onto the potential of using a Part 80 land mobile type radio on the Coast Guard frequencies. Ham radios don't quite qualify, but you'll see that many of the ham manufacturers make Part 80 type radios that can be also used for the NTIA channels. So it's up to your local auxiliary flotilla. So log on to the uscgaux.org site and see what it takes to become a Coast Guard auxiliarist. And we would sure like to have more ham radio operators become telecommunications officers, because you can then begin working side by side by those hardworking Coast Guard auxiliarists and help with their radio equipment. And when you get a stuck channel 16 transmitter or an EPIRB that's going off in your local area, you may be the one that they call up saying, we need a response of, and you're ready to roll. So welcome to the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. I've been doing it for over 25 years. My wife, Susie, and the cat put up with it, and we have a great time serving our country. So we'll go for your questions first, and then we'll jump over to Icom that makes this wonderful Part 80 radio.
Hey,
so Josh, question.
Yeah, question from Brian, WM8G. Hey, Gordo, as an auxiliarist, do you stand radio watch at any Coast Guard stations? And if not, what do you do now?
Okay, yes, we do stand watches at smaller, not the main one, not the main ComCom in Chesapeake, but on smaller stations. And yes, they're always looking for telecommunication officer auxiliarists that will come in and give them a break, or at least be a log keeper. There's plenty to do at some of the smaller stations.
There was a lot of questions on how to kind of enroll or get involved, and I think you covered it. So again, CGAUX, I posted the link there in the chat for people to follow. So that was we got like 5 or 6 of those. So I think those were the big questions there, Gordo. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great site. And you'll notice the site is relatively up to date. The big deal is the U.S. Coast Guard has run out of the funds to keep their high frequency stations guarding some of the ship to shore distress channels here throughout the world. So many times Coast Guard auxiliarists with high frequency capabilities will go from the high of 4 megahertz on their HF radio to 5 megahertz to an NTIA long range channel, or a 4 megs marine channel, or some of the other channels, and handle that traffic and then relay it to Chesapeake, Virginia. So hams are really needed also for high frequency, because they've run out of funds to be able to keep their equipment monitoring 24/7 to the high frequency emergency radio frequencies.
All right. Well, thanks again for that. That was an insightful short shots, Gordo. Thank you.
Well,
Very
you're
good
welcome.
stuff.
And now, as we said, Icom America, very big on supporting emergency comms with their marine radio VHF equipment and their marine radio high frequency single sideband equipment, which this one over here does, drop that down, does ham radio quite nicely as well. So let's take a listen and see what high frequency does and Icom America for us hams.
Got cabin fever? Look no further. Spring is just around the corner, and Icom has what you're looking for. Our top quality base stations, mobiles, and handhelds are perfect for working your favorite bands inside the ham shack or venturing out this spring. Icom's newest FM transceiver is the ICV3500, and it's ready to hit the road whenever you are. With a compact body and simple interface, this radio is a must for those looking for a long-range mobile with a fresh look. Go further with 65 watts output and get louder with 4.5 watts of audio with the ICV3500. The rugged Icom IC-T10 portable meets or exceeds standard military testing. With an IP67 waterproof rating, the IC-T10 can withstand any field activities ahead, hear any transmission, and listen to FM broadcast with a loud 1500 milliwatt speaker. The IC-T10 is an excellent choice for any bug-out bag. The IC7300 is a high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design that will far exceed your expectations. This innovative HF transceiver digitizes RF before various stages, reducing inherent noise in different IF stages. With RF direct sampling, the IC7300 changes the way entry-level HF is designed. The IC705 is a perfect sidekick and QRP companion. Base station features and functionalities at the tips of your fingers in a portable package covering HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs just under 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the optional backpack LC192 with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories. The ID52A is a VHF-UHF dual bander with D-Star and FM dual mode functions and is the first handheld amateur radio with a full-color 2.3-inch waterfall display. This radio supports conventional FM communications and D-Star simplex, repeater, regional, and worldwide calls over the D-Star Internet Gateway. Send photos over D-Star with a connected Android device. The ID52A is a perfect companion to the IC705. Both use compatible batteries and headsets, and you can also use the same Android app for D-Star operation. Learn more about these and all the great Icom radios at icomamerica.com/amateur. For the love of ham radio.
And a big thank you again to Icom. We appreciate all the fine folks over there. And I want to remind everybody, if you click the link at Icom America, link is in the description that says Enter Now. It signs you up for a giveaway that we do every time Ham Nation is live. We pick 3 winners. Those 3 winners get a swag pack. It's like a shirt, hat, other things. Don't quote me on that, but it is a swag pack full of fun stuff. And then every of those 3 people get added to a growing list throughout the year that gets picked once a month to win a radio. And this month's radio is going to be an IC2730, a fantastic. I have one right in front of me that I use all the time. My favorite kind of just in the shack, easy to use VHF, UHF radio. So those swag pack winners this this episode is Larry H, KS9J, David B, KB3HTD, and Danny M, VX0S. So congratulations to all the winners, and thanks again to Icom. Don, let's go off to you and hear what's the latest news.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I wanted to dovetail a little bit on what Michael Kalter was talking about with the forums at Dayton. It is the return of something that was very popular that Bill Pasternak, WA6ITF, our late leader, used to do. It was the Amateur Radio Newsline Town Hall meeting. It was an hour and a half, and he had speakers, some of the best and the brightest in amateur radio, talking about various subjects. And it was a great forum. I was the timekeeper for many years at the forum, and I would go to Dayton And anyway, it is back after several years. It ended before he passed away, unfortunately. But Friday, May 19th is the return. Check the website. I'm not exactly sure which room it's in, but I think it's one of the bigger ones. Friday, May 19th, 11:35 a.m. until 1, we will have Riley Hollingsworth, K4ZDH. He will talk about the current progress of the volunteer monitor program. We'll have Mark Smith, M6MTS. He'll present his proposal for the Open Headset Interface Standard, or OHIS. And Tim Ellum, president of the IARU, will be speaking about the current status of the IARU, the relationship with the ARRL, and any current issues of interest to the general ham radio public. So we certainly look forward to seeing you guys there and packing the room for the return of the town hall meeting, the Newsline town hall meeting at Hamvention. It's Friday, May 19th, 11:35 to 1. We've got a report from Dr. Tamitha Skov coming up right on the other side of the news report from Amateur Radio Newsline. From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2371, this is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. Our top story this week takes us to a foreboding, uninhabitable granite islet in the North Atlantic Ocean, where a trio of de-expeditioners are just weeks away from activating that site. They hope to set a world record while turning that desolate location into a symbol of hope.
When they land on Rockhall Island in a few weeks, Emil Bergman, DL8JJ, Nobby Stiles, G0VJG, and expedition lead Cam Cameron hope to be the third de-expedition team to activate the island, and they will use MM0UKI as their call sign. Rockhall is one of the world's most wanted islands on the air and bears the designation EU189. The team isn't just looking to set a record. With donations and sponsorship and the team members' own investments in the trip, they're looking to raise £50,000 for charities. This challenging journey to a remote spot 230 miles west of Scotland and 430 miles south of Iceland follows the expeditions in 2005 and 2011. Knowing that there are fewer than 400 claimed QSLs from previous expeditions, the teams expect the airwaves to be busy. This is Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
Spring has barely sprung, but it's already been a horrific tornado season in the U.S. Of course, hams were on the job.
In the past week, we've had reports of fierce storms that spawned possibly dozens of tornadoes from the south and the Midwest into the Northeast, killing at least 32 people. Deadly storms also hit the central U.S., including Arkansas and Missouri. Joshua Carroll, AA5JC, Assistant Section Emergency Coordinator for Skywarn and Aries for Arkansas, reported that during the March 31st tornado in his state, 112 operators were involved in net activities during the storms that brought devastation especially to the western part of Little Rock. It wasn't just ham radio nets, which included Echolink and All-Star, he told AR Newsline. Our thought was, use what works. His team also collected and sent reports to the National Weather Service that they received through texts, Facebook, Twitter, GMRS, and WinLink. In talking with the forecast office after the event, Joshua was told, "You guys were on fire." They indicated that 3 warnings were issued based on these reports. Lives were probably saved. This is Randy Sly, W4XJ.
An international team of de-expeditioners is making plans to visit a coral atoll in the Pacific that hasn't been activated in 10 years.
One of the next big de-expeditions in the works is well into the planning stages by the Perseverance DX Group. It's been 10 years since a major activation has taken place on the uninhabited Clipperton Island, which carries the IOTA designation of November Alpha-011 as a protected environmental reserve that is the only French possession in the North Pacific. Its last major activation was in 2013, the same year that Perseverance DX Group was founded. Next year, an international team of experienced operators will be on the island using the call sign Tango X-Ray 5 Sierra. They expect to be on the air from the 18th of January 2024 to the 2nd of February. Previous de-expeditions by the group have included South Orkney Island, Victor Papa 8 Papa Juliet in 2020, Ducey Island, Victor Papa 6 Delta in 2018, and Chesterfield Reef, Tango X-Ray 3 X-Ray in 2015. This is Patrick Clark, K8TAC.
A side note, Patrick Clark, K8TAC, is our 2001 Newsline Young Ham of the Year recipient. His call sign then was KC8BFD. Longtime listeners will recognize Patrick's deep voice as very similar to his father's, Jeff Clark, K8UR, formerly K8JAC. We're proud to have Patrick on the staff and hope to have Jeff back in the anchor chair soon. And speaking of Young Ham of the Year,
a reminder, the nominating period for the 2023 Amateur Radio Newsline Bill Pasternak WA6ITF Young Ham of the Year Award is now open. You'll find more information and the nominating form on our website, arnewsline.org, under the Awards tab. We'll present the award in August at the Huntsville Hamfest in Alabama.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, Randy Sly, W4XJ, Patrick Clark, K8TAC, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe, I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3, we'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now, here's the solar update from Dr. Tamitha Skov, WX6SWW.
We have a wispy solar storm that could graze Earth, and a big flare player rotates into view, with more soon to follow. Those stories and more in the news this week. Space weather this week is remaining a bit on the calm side. As we take a look at our Earth-facing disk, you can see there's not a lot of activity going on. However, back around late on the 6th, you can see near region 3270, whoosh, there's a neat little solar storm that's launched that's going to go south of Earth for the most part. But then on the 7th, you can see another one about mid-disk, whoosh, another gentle solar storm launch. Now, both of these launches really look like they're going to go south of Earth, but we could get a grazing passage starting around the 11th, possibly into the 12th, and not expecting all that much activity, but it could give a little bit of aurora to high latitude. So aurora photographers, be aware of that. You could get a little bit of something. Meanwhile, we also have a small coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone right around the same time, so we could get some fast solar wind from that. Again, just giving a little bit of a nice bump for aurora at high latitudes. But the big story is really region 3272. This region in the south has been rotating. It's not in the Earth strike zone yet, but it has fired off a couple of big M-class flares at an R1 level radio blackout. Hasn't launched any Earth-directed solar storms, but that could change as it begins to rotate toward this Earth center disk. So over the next week, we are going to be watching it, and there's going to be other regions that are rotating into Earth view here over the next couple days. So expect that flare risk to rise, and we could get more radio blackouts here over this next coming week. Switching to our M-flare threat meter, as you can see, over the past week, we've actually been pretty quiet. There haven't been a lot of big solar flares, but right around the 4th, we could see that the X-ray flux began to rise a little bit. We've actually now clipped up above the seafloor, and this also means by proxy that the solar flux is rising. In fact, most of this has been due to region 3272. Right around the 6th, you can see it actually popped a big M-class flare. This was an R1 level radio blackout, but this was before the region was even fully into view. So amateur radio operators and emergency responders on Earth's day side, be aware we are having radio blackouts now, and they could get bigger and longer. It all depends upon what's going to happen with this region. We also have another region that's going to rotate into Earth view that looks like it could also be a big flare player. So just be aware that big flares are back on the menu, and radio blackouts are once again going to join us, along with more noise on the radio bands. Switching to your solar flare and dayside radio blackout outlook over the coming week, we do have a couple big flare players on the Earth-facing disk. One of them, region 3270, is going to be rotating to the sun's far side here in the next 24 to 48 hours. But region 3272 is going to keep those radio blackouts coming. In fact, we are sitting right now at about 130s for solar flux. This means good radio propagation on Earth's dayside, and we could ramp up even further, possibly possibly up closer to the 150s into the next week as more regions rotate into Earth view. But all this is keeping the noise on the radio bands at the moderate range. In fact, NOAA's expecting about a 30% chance of M-class flares over the next few days. And this means a 30% chance of R1 to R2 level radio blackouts. And this is going to continue easily over this next week, and it possibly may rise again as these new regions rotate into view. The nice thing is that R3 level radio blackouts, it doesn't look like we're going to see that very much. So amateur radio operators, we're going to have to just deal with those blackouts on the day side, but at least radio propagation stays in the good range easily through this week and the next week as well. So the space weather this week is staying a bit on the calm side as far as solar storms go. We do have a couple solar storms that are on their way, but they're probably going to go south of Earth and just graze us a little bit. Now, aurora photographers, if you're at high latitudes, this could mean you could get a little bit of a show. Don't expect a lot, but we do have that coronal hole that's also rotating in through the Earth strike zone, and that could enhance things just a bit for you. So we could expect some activity from about the 11th through about the 13th before things calm down, but again, it's not going to be all that active. Meanwhile, amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, you're dealing with a new big flare player on the Earth-facing disk. This is region 3272, and it has been firing big flares about an R1 level radio blackout. Likely that's going to remain about the same. But we do have a new region that looks like it could rotate into view in about 3 to maybe 4 days, and it will actually cause some potential for more radio blackouts for you. So just know that that's going to be pretty much the state of things over this next week, but expect radio propagation to stay a bit on the good side. And now you GPS users, well, things aren't too bad. We are having a few radio blackouts here and there that makes the dawn and dusk terminator areas a little bit dicey. But the solar storming, well, it's not all that big a deal. So aurora shouldn't be too much of a problem. So as long as you stay away from those dawn dusk terminators, your GPS reception should be pretty good. Happy Easter, everyone. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Dr. T. Always great to have you on board, and we certainly appreciate your efforts. If you do not follow her on Twitter, you certainly need to, at Tamitha Skov. On YouTube, it's Tamitha Skov, and of course, her website, spaceweatherwoman.com. I encourage you to go to the YouTube site and look at that entire report. It's 12 minutes long, her part. Our combined part tonight was 10, so I had to cut about a third. I edited it down, her report, to about a third of its original length. She's got things on aurora and moon phases and all kinds of good stuff on just this one report that's around 12, 13 minutes long. So do yourself a favor, follow her on Twitter, go check out her videos on her YouTube channel, and follow her on spaceweatherwoman.com. Well worth it. Well, Josh, that's it for me. We're running late and doing great, and good to have Michael Kalter on here tonight. A lot of great information about the Coast Guard Auxiliary from Gordon, and we're missing Amanda, but it's over to you, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody, for listening. I do have to mention there is no D-Star net that's been posted on the live chat, so thanks for the update there, Paul. I don't know the frequencies for the HF net. Does anybody know those off the top of your heads? Your collective heads.
Looking, yeah, I don't know.
I don't see it on the show notes. I'll have to ask.
I got it. 7192.
There you go. Thank you, Gordo. Clutch with the answer on that one. And I'll give everybody a bit of an insider information. I can now release this information if you waited that long. We will be back again at the Troll Pub Saturday night for Hamvention. So if you joined us at the Troll Pub last year,
nice.
Can't think of a better name for a YouTube meetup. The Troll Pub with all of our friends in the comments. We had such a fantastic time last year, and we had such amazing service that we decided to do it again this year. So it'll be Saturday evening. Basically, we all start conglomerating over at the Troll Pub at the end of the show on Saturday night. So that's just the best way, is just kind of show up and hang out with us. But that's all I've got. Anybody have anything before we wrap things up here?
We're done. I think just hope everyone had a good Easter.
Yes, sir.
And
go ahead.
Next week, you'll see all the things that happened at Dayton Hamvention that you wouldn't believe. Funny shots.
So next show, be ready for that. 2 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks. So, Michael, we appreciate you again, and as always, appreciate you. And until we talk to you all again, have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your week in 73.
Good night, everyone. 7-3.